This video was originally on my Patreon and I am re-releasing it on my YouTube channel. I am releasing my guides one at a time late on my YouTube, but early for my patrons. This one is Black Yellow Luffy with Eric. What I do with my guides is I get one good player that's good with that deck, and I have them teach me that deck, so there's at least one good player in the video. And this video was really brought to you by my patrons here. I do want to thank my patrons for the Prime tier, Wraith and Paul, the One Piece Pro tier, Anthony and Chair, and then obviously my chicken sandwich tier. I do appreciate you guys buying me chicken sandwiches. I have all these other guides on my Patreon that will soon make it to my YouTube channel, and I'm going to start on OP07 next week. It's a great day here at Kek-Filet's Patreon, a very first Patreon video guides, and if you've ever seen any of my guides before, you'll have an idea of what to see from this. But I have with me Eric. How are you doing today, Eric?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. And today, our video is just about Taxi Luffy, Black Yellow Luffy, Wizka Luffy, whatever people want to call this Black Yellow leader. And kind of a meta stomper, not a meta stomper, but definitely a meta contender, especially in 07 and EB01 right now. Yeah. But we're just going to go over the deck list, why to play the deck, Mulligan, first, second, ending games, early game, and on top of that, just all the matchups. But I guess we'll kind of actually just jump into it first. I do want to say, if you guys don't know Eric Quintana has, been on the scene for a very long time. He tops a lot of tournaments. There was a little bit of a dry spell recently, but games are hard, right? But Eric recently did top at Oviedo going X1, and I don't see any reason for him to, get worse at the game. So I feel like Eric gives a lot of good advice as far as decks goes, and he's really great to work with. So with that, Eric, why should we be playing, or what's the reason why should we play Monkey D. Luffy?
Luffy's actually really good this minute. The thing you need to dodge, in my opinion, is mostly just Sokka. But if you say you dodge, or you say you only play like one or two Sokkas in a tournament, if you can beat one, then you'll be fine. It doesn't have that bad of a matchup. I would give it like 60-40 towards Sokka. But against every other deck, this deck is just a menace. Becoming a 9K leader is so hard to deal with. We all understood how broken Whitebeard was when he just became an 8K leader. And he was at 0 life. It is basically the same thing, except you're in 9K and you just bring out multiple bodies.
Yeah.
So this deck is very powerful. It might seem very linear. It gets linear towards like the very end of the game when you can just do Luffy effect plus Moria. But leading up to that, the deck is very complicated and actually very fun to play, in my opinion. Has a lot of combo elements. So I think it's a very, very strong contender. It destroys Moria, which is if it's like a 1B to Sokka's 1A. So it's really good against Sokka. It's really good against Moria.
Yeah.
It's pretty decent into Red Purple Law. It's meh into Sokka. It's good into like other like random, like it's like a gatekeeper deck, like how Enel was in OP5.
I want to say that this deck, your opponent will look at you and just not know what to do. They will literally, like, this is a puzzle in my head, and then they'll just like play a big guy and pass turn. Like they have no idea if they should attack, if they shouldn't attack, if they should be pressing me, if they should wait out, and all of those decisions are always wrong. So that's that's what I like about this deck. You'll actually find your opponent looking at the board and you for like 5 minutes, trying to math this little Dawn puzzle out where it's just not possible. You just saw it. Right. So, but I guess I do want to put some warnings on here. What are some things that maybe deter people from this deck? I can throw my own little thing. I find that sometimes it can be kind of a headache with end game and just not seeing all the right cards. If you're not seeing any of their combo pieces, Black Sabos, not seeing a Gecko Moria, that can be really tough.
So some turrets, this is a combo deck, so you do need to see your pieces. For me, like Keck said, Moria, sometimes you don't see but more annoying than that is you don't get to see like the baby version of a big guy, and that really like stunts like your ability to go forward. You do get a lot of filter and a lot of search through this deck, so it doesn't happen too often. But there's some games you're gonna have to fight through that.
Yep.
Another thing is playing against a really good opponent. Sometimes, like if you don't see 5-drop Luffy and they just don't attack you, sometimes you never can actually set up to where you can get to 0 life and be able to start doing your combos, and then they end up getting you in one turn.
Yeah.
Not recently for me, but there's a lot of sequencing. It's very sequence heavy deck, and messing up a sequence can cost you games. For example, this last week, I played a tournament. I lost to one of my Saka opponents because I missequenced by I had a baby ace in hand, and I was a 7K leader, and he swung at me for 5, and I should have just countered the 5, even though the attack did nothing, just so I could put ace in the graveyard for my next turn, so that my Moria could bring it back and stuff. So there's like a little different lot of lines you have to take to get to the easy end game, because before getting to the easy part is all the hard setup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely you need to do those kind of check marks, right? A lot of remembering things, like, oh, it's kind of like how with Reiju was. Oh, I have all the little guys and I have all the big guys. I have all the little guys and the big guys in my trash. We're good to go. It's the same thing, but it feels a lot tougher because a lot of the searches with Monkey D. Garp and Three Brothers Bonds, you're bottom decking those other cards, so you know you're not going to draw. Like if you like look at the top 5 cards of your deck and you see like 4 black Sabos, you're not getting another black Sabo, right? So
yeah, you're just gonna have that one that you searched.
Yeah, exactly. Those sort of things that do come up and happen. So you have to be really smart in sequencing. Not even the searches, but on top of that, like you said, like getting cards in trash to make even Gecko Moria worth it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay.
That being said, though, just needing one of each piece is very nice, because all you really need is one of the one of each baby and one of each big, and you can probably just combo for like the rest of the game just based off that, as long as they don't get bottom deck.
I would say aim toward, if you have to choose, aim toward a piece that helps you in that matchup. Right, I think a general good idea is seeing just grab Black Sabo. It's gonna grab you every other piece. That will fix everything else. However, if you're afraid that you need to see, little Sabo to see Black Sabo, or if you need to see little Ace to see big Ace, or any of these kind of combos, it might be worth to see those searching things like you're saying, right? And people need to remember as well, it's like a mechanic thing. People actually forget you can call cards from your hand to your life. So don't worry too much about trashing the big cards, besides it just being more efficient, right?
Yeah. It just makes it a lot easier. But normally your first time you become a 9K leader, it's not through Moria. It's normally just by hard playing the babies.
Yeah. And then
getting them out. And then from there, your Moria is set the rest of the game.
Exactly right. And even on the first time you do that, you actually might be okay to go to 7K if that's if your opponent has to set up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because if your opponent sets up, they still can't swing a 7 at you.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, we all saw how strong 6K was for 3 whole formats.
Yeah, you don't always
7K is one more than that.
You don't always need to go to 9K right away. You can go to 7K and then 9K for the rest of the game. So great. Let's actually jump into deck lists. I do want to go over 2, and I like Eric so far. I did see another one that did recently really well, Fleche, and we'll go over that. And they're both just different, and I'll I do want to shout out to Fleche here in a moment, but we'll go over Eric's first. Eric, what about your deck list? What do you want to talk about with this?
So mine is a more defensive style deck list. I run 4 more blockers and 2 Violas and 2 Ivankovs. This lets me set up for certain endgame scenarios a lot easier, where I get to be a 9K leader with a life. And against a lot of decks, that's almost impossible to beat. But besides that, the list is very standard. The only non-standard thing is I'm running only 3 rush aces. And I only run 3 because I found myself needing only 1 most of the time. And it being a brick is an actual drawback.
Yeah.
So I decided to cut it down to to 3 so I can fit in some of the new cards, which was the Violas.
Yeah.
And the new Flambe.
Would you say people could probably take these in and out depending on whatever? It's just kind of your variants. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go back up to 4 and take out the Ivankovs.
Mm-hmm.
And then put in like another yellow Sabo.
Yeah.
And that would just be the exact same thing.
I do want to comment on the Violas. The Violas are interesting. The putting your life face down is really good in blue yellow ace. It's actually pretty good in this one. It's nothing actually too crazy because usually like that one life will be like a random 5-drop, right? That you take your life instead. But
there's less areas.
Organizing your opponent's life early on is actually pretty interesting. So I've had a couple scenarios where that actually mattered because
I don't use the reorganize my opponents often unless I already know my life.
Yeah.
But most of the time what happens is during late game, if you have a Viola in hand, you can just activate the Luffy effect. Put 2 Sabos to your life and then just put them both face down. And now your opponent actually has to attack you. And it just adds you 2 Sabos to your hand. So, and you get a blocker. So it's actually really hard for most decks to kill you from that spot.
Yeah, exactly. It's also a good card to play down with Gecko Moria. Is that like the kind of the scenario you're thinking?
The other scenario is you play down. See on 10 Dawn. If you're trying to set up to where you can become a 9K leader in the following turn, you can use the Luffy effect, put down 2 guys. Or put like Sabo Ace usually is the way I do, but the opposite. It's gonna be Ace Sabo, and then you play Viola, put them both face down, and then you bring back Viola untapped and Baby Sabo tapped. Then you can sack the Baby Sabo, play Big Sabo. And now you're 7K leader, 2 blockers, and then next turn your next Moria is just gonna become really strong. So.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, it's a really big online. That sounds like a little bit of a slow game in there, but that's sometimes what happens. Your opponents put you in slow game scenarios, but you're a late game deck. That's what you should be aiming for, right?
Yeah.
Great. I do want to go over Fleche's list real quick. This is just kind of like my little touch on this. And with Fleche, again, he has a Twitter. He actually kind of almost gave a full guide on his Twitter. So I want to shout out to that guy so you can guys look at that full guide and how he tries to play against everything. But as you can see, he plays less Luffy. I think he decided to cut this a little bit because he decided to play more Yellow Sabo and more Amaru. I think he was probably playing against really good Sokka players and wanted to have any angle he can to maybe beat them. And that's what he did. So he actually ends up being more of the aggressor. And you can trash your own life with Sabo, so they have no chance of really out-aggressing you. And on top of that, the Amaru it's just destructive late game. I know it can't rest a Sabo, but most of the time they're spamming Rebecca's, and this just kind of destroys Rebecca's through and through. And then, of course, like the other combos. The only cute thing here is Perona, but I think he's thinking on his 8 Dawn turn. You'll play down a Gecko Moria, and you'll play down a Perona, and I don't remember what the other card. Oh, like a Garp from your trash, so you can get more searchability off of that. And that's pretty obnoxious against most opponents. They're gonna find that to be. But did you have any thoughts on this list as far as that goes? Maybe just it's extremely angled towards Sakazuki.
It is angled towards Sakazuki because one of the main problems against Sakazuki is when they go Kuzan, and if you can't get rid of it, that's what Sabo's for. Also, he's using his first Gecko usually in that matchup as a super value Gecko. So Gecko bringing back a 5K, which is an attacker, discarding an opponent's card and drawing a card, and putting 2 bodies is really good. I understand also the Amaru, because in my testing, after you play the first Gecko, the main way most decks answer it is they go their own Gecko, bring back Rebecca to bring back Hina to minus to then get rid of your Gecko. Yeah. Which means they're only left with the Rebecca for the most time. And Amaru can help you answer that.
Yeah.
I do want to I don't know how his... Go ahead. Oh, well, I don't know how his matchups what his matchups were. I wonder how he does into Starvanel. Because against all those decks that like try and starve, like Starvanel, Uta, Someone like they're not really fringe, but they're like tier 2 decks.
Yeah.
Or tier 1.5.
Yeah.
How missing the Luffy would be.
Yeah.
Because I think Luffy is very good in those matchups. But overall, I do like the thought process on this list. And I think it's very good. So
yeah, I think it's definitely worth to look at least the Amarus. Maybe the Peronas isn't so crazy, right? But the Amarus are definitely worth it. And obviously seeing these Luffy cards, I think I like about yours. A couple other thing is there are a couple other topping lists recently. They're running stuff like Buzz Cut Mochi, like 2 or 3 of these. And I think that's pretty strong, but it's more of a late game card because you're never really below your opponent in life. At early game, right?
The only thing I don't like about Buzz Kamochi is it kind of forces you to play your flambe in the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
So that means your first life your opponent won't take. Because what I like to do is I like to keep my like flambes and hioris for when my opponent tries to keep me at 2 life, so I can just play 2 of them real quick and get to 0. But if you're using one early just so you can set up a mochi, it means your opponent's most likely not going to attack you. Because people feel more comfortable attacking you when you're at 4 or 3 life, just so they can get their value from either like a Saka effect, a Moria effect, an Uta effect, stuff like that. They'll usually attack you when you're at 4 life. But once you get down to 3, and especially at 2, they just won't attack you anymore until they're ready to actually go for game. So I've come into a situation where people do the early drop of flambe and like basically they're life producers or they're self awakeners, and they end up running out of gas and then the other person just gets to wait, and then they get to take you out in one turn because you never got to see another like your second or third flambe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think there are better options. I just wanted to at least bring it up because there was some success for other people.
So yeah, I saw. I think the card's cool though.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's one of those things where we're switching out 2 or 3 cards in every deck to angle.
I mean, it's It's just basically would you rather have Buzz Mochi or Sabo, and I just would rather have Sabo.
Don't play Thunderbolt, guys. Don't play Thunderbolt. You know, trash.
Yeah.
But Sabo's really strong. Just play more of these kind of cards, and you'll get good value out of it.
Right? I mean, searchable 1K, and you can bring it back.
There was a cringe build that I was playing a couple Rebecca's, but that's that was interesting. So they can play Rebecca's to get Sabos back out. But
yeah,
I think it seems that the core of the deck is pretty there, but you can switch out like 5 or 6 cards for X. So
yeah.
That's kind of what we're thinking. So with that, we're gonna go back to your deck list, and I'm just gonna jump into the next topic here. What should we be angling for the Mulligan? What are we mulliganing for?
So you're mostly looking for Garp and Three Brothers Bond, but ideally with either one of those two, you'll have either Black Sabo or Yellow Luffy.
Yeah, got it.
So the way that my priority works when I'm doing my searches is it will be it depends on matchup, but in general, if I don't have a Yellow Luffy and they haven't attacked me, or they're a matchup that they won't attack me, I want Yellow Luffy. So it'd be Yellow Luffy, Black Sabo, Baby Sabo, Big Ace, Baby Luffy.
Okay, and
that's my order of like
Luffy,
what I want.
Sabo, baby, Ace, Little Luffy.
Yeah, because Little Luffy is usually the one you don't bring out often, but you do want it for those situations where you need to bring him out.
Yeah.
But you definitely want like one Ace, one of each Ace.
Yeah.
And the most important one after you get one Luffy is just Sabo, because Sabo lets you filter more cards, which lets you dig into your Morias, into your Flambés, into your other 5 drops.
And I would say even too, like this card might be a good card to see, especially if you're against certain
Sakazuki.
Decks.
Yeah, Sakazuki, the Yellow Sabo rises tremendously.
Yeah,
and against Red Purple Law.
Yeah,
because killing their Shirai and Kid.
Yeah,
is very important.
Very good. Yeah, I will say that. So just to kind of like make it really simple, if you have like a Searcher and a Gecko Moria and like 3 other cards, you're probably in a good spot. generally. You don't have to mulligan for this, but like seeing a black Sabo is just the same as like seeing anything. So this is also a good card to see. So Searcher, maybe a black Sabo, and then on top of that, there's like a list of things that we can go
so
down.
like,
but
if we're gonna make it real bare bones, any Searcher plus black Sabo or yellow Luffy or a Moria is most likely a keep.
Yeah.
You'll get more in depth as you play it. You'll realize what cards you actually need in certain matchups, and then it changes from there. But for the most part, I always just try and find Searchers because the Searchers let me figure out what I'm gonna need.
Yeah, got it.
So
great. With that, going first or second, and I think generally the answer second's pretty good.
Second's really strong. The way I view it is I go second against Sokka and every aggressive deck.
Mm-hmm.
And then every deck that wants to go first, I take away first from them.
Yeah, I've been taking away first from Gecko Moria lately.
Yeah,
but
I take first from Gecko. You can, but you can still play as it going second, so they don't get their like Gecko turn.
Yeah.
But the main reason is I don't like them being able to like aggress me down before I'm like ready to.
They can do that. I lost like that. They aggressed me down, and I was unfortunately flop-paying myself too. So I just
So from just the tier decks, just real quick, it would be like Sakazuki second, Moria first, Katakuri first. Katakuri can go first or second, however you feel. I think it's just a good matchup for us. Uta, for Uta, I like to take second because they're a pseudo aggro deck because they want to attack you to get their effects every turn. Enel second.
Yeah.
Red Purple Law second.
Yeah.
Yamato second.
Just things where it hurts them because a lot of these decks like Yamato, Red Purple Law, their curve is just so much better going second than first.
Well, Yamato wants to go first, but the main reason we want to go second against Yamato is they're going to be aggressive whether we're first or second, and us going second lets us be at 6 Dawn by the time they get us to 0, which lets us use our effect and play 2 babies.
Yeah.
So that's the thought process behind it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good way to think about it, especially playing a black Sabo against them is going to be gross. Even if they're able to Hody Jones you that early, like you're at
9 life.
So. You're at 9. Yeah, exactly. Right.
So they're just gonna swing a 10k at you and just 2k out of it.
Yeah, exactly. They're actually in a really bad puzzle the whole game. So because really they should probably just be going wide against you, but you're okay taking damage. It actually might be smart for them not to attack you for a turn.
Yeah. Well, I mean they've done that to me where like they swing, so I won die roll. They swung 8 at me, I took it. And then my next turn, I just I had a Garp, so I swung 6, swung 5.
Yeah.
And then they swing, and then they decide to just like play Gadatsu pass, not attack me. I'm like, that's fine by me because I play Sabo, and then they do the Hody Jones thing where they tap, swing with Yamato. I guard the Yamato, and then they kill my guy. I'm like, that's fine. You're just stalling the game later, and if the game goes too long, I'm just gonna be a permanent 9k.
Yeah.
And then your deck has a really hard time getting by me. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's what I found at least.
Yeah, I agree with that too. The only problem is no, it's not really a problem. They have to have a good way to rest your Sabo blocker, but that's only Hody Jones, and they can't play Hody Jones and how big can they swing with Hody Jones if 13. 13 and 13. Yeah, that's pretty big. Yeah, that could be concerning, but there's ways around that, right?
I've had games where I've lost. They have no cards, and Hody Jones is the only out. And it gets there, so you definitely have to be careful against basically all of these decks.
Got it.
Yeah. And that is also a deck. If you are allowed to, becoming a 9k leader with a life is very, very strong.
Yeah. Early game. Playing this out early game, what are your thoughts? I guess we kind of went over the first like turn or two. You were thinking like hopefully like a Garp into leader swing and Garp swing.
Yeah, that's your ideal. Your ideal turn one. Say if you're going first or second, is to play Garp, and then your next turn is to swing with Garp and your leader. Or if you have another searcher and you went first,
Yeah.
you just swing 7 with your leader and then search again.
Yeah.
And then following up usually want to go Luffy, and
you could play Sabo too.
You can't play if you have either or. You play either one.
If they really put you down, you can maybe even do whatever's in your hand, right?
Yeah.
And what
the main thing is you only want to do Luffy if you have 3 or more life.
Yeah.
If you're at 2 life, do not play Luffy and activate his effect. You can just play Luffy and not activate the effect, which is fine. But you never want to put yourself at 1 because 1's a very vulnerable state where they can rush you down the next turn.
Yeah.
So if I'm at 2 life, I usually play Sabo. If I'm at 3+, I'll play Luffy, and then I'll activate the effect to go down to 2. Other plays that have happened is I've hard played, Yellow Sabo again in certain scenarios, and then I've hard played Ace and just passed.
Oh, not even swinging with it?
Yeah, well, it probably won't have rush, but a lot of times, you'll be at like 3 life or whatever, and I'll just hard play the Ace and pass, and then the next turn I'll set up like a real big like Luffy plus Baby Ace or like Ivankov Baby Ace into swing like a lot, like 7/7/7.
That's the interesting way to think about it. One thing I want to warn people about, being at 1 life is really scary because what they'll do is, let's say they are like at 7 or 8 dawn, they'll swing 5k with a character and you're forced to guard it because they're gonna swing 13k with their leader, and it's kind of hard to just bring up 9k counter. You're gonna lose like your whole hand defending 1 attack. So just be careful with that. But okay, and now I guess middle game. Maybe I'll just put like more of a middle game here on this arrow, as you see.
Okay.
A middle game. I guess we'll kind of lean more toward our first leader pump. Maybe it's like 8, 9, 10 dawn. I've done it as early as like 7 dawn before if I have to be aggressive. But
I've done it also. Usually it's around 8 or 9 dawn is when this is what the early game or the mid game where you usually use Ivankov or Hiyori to either do the strategy where you put one of your 5 drops into life, play the baby, play that 5 drop, and then activate leader effect so you can be at the 9k 1 life, or you just play flambés.
Yeah.
You take your last life, you draw a card, and then you just use leader ability, play 2 babies from your hand. Yeah, become a 9k leader, and with usually a blocker Sabo. And what this lets you do is if you get to that point, you get to set up for next turn's Moria play because you just put 2 babies in the graveyard. You have 2 big guys on board, and ideally you would have another couple big guys in graveyard that you looted away with Sabo.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah. Sabo is the key.
He's the heart and soul in the deck.
He is the heart and soul of this deck because you'll be in situations. I just need to draw Moria, and you just need to draw through your deck. So, or other key pieces, but okay, yeah. So the middle game's kind of toward there, I guess. Ending games, I feel like with this you could stall out indefinitely if you're able to see enough cards in your hand, right? But at some point it's like, oh, my opponent just can't guard out of my attacks, right? You have to know when your opponent just can't guard out of 11k swings anymore.
I won't say indefinitely you can do it. I would say you have like 3 to 4 turns of actually being able to just stop most attacks, because you have to remember you discard a card every time you use the Luffy effect.
Yeah.
And then playing the Moria is another card out of your hand. So, and that's if you're doing it the Moria way. If you're playing 2 babies from your hand, that's discarding 2 other cards. Yeah. So you run out of resources quickly if you're doing it that way. Usually it doesn't matter because your opponents usually take the first 2 hits, because on our first couple turns we're just swinging big numbers. We're swinging like 7 or 8, and then they usually take so they can get their own resources to keep going. But later on you end up getting to play, like, each time you do a Moria cycle, it comes with a swing with Ace, which is 7k, so that's 2 cards, and then your leader, which is 11k, which is a blocker almost every time, or a life.
And even sometimes too, your opponent's not putting pressure on you, So you're allowed to like let like your ace die, or you'll have too many. This happens a lot of time. You'll have too many cards on board, and you'll have like a Sabo you want to play from your trash, but you don't have any Sabos. They're on the field. So you'll swing with like your blocker Sabo and then play your 8-cost Moria and then play your other cards over it. That's a very
that happens
common
all
thing.
the time.
So
and then key thing is if you're a 9K leader and they attack your big ace, you just let it go.
Okay.
You say ace was a blocker, thank you. And then you play the Moria next turn and just bring it back. But yeah, and then ideally you just block with your Sabos, even if they're just swinging 9K, because the cards in your hands is more important most of the time than the bodies on board. Unless you need to go for game the next turn, then you obviously just a counter out of your hand.
Yeah.
And then get ready for lethal that way.
Exactly, yeah. You're kind of trying to set your opponent up so you're going to be at the end of your game swinging like 9, 9, 9, 10, 10. Something insanely big, because that's how your end games look. So
another tip I have for people playing, when you're cycling with Sabo, you want to put the big guys in the graveyard and you want to keep the babies in hand. So ideally, the priority is 2Ks, Moria, and then babies, especially Ace.
Yeah.
Ace, keeping Ace babies in your hands is very good.
Ace
because,
and Sabo, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Ace and Sabo, but I like Ace more because when it gets to the later game, like the last like 1 or 2 turns, a lot of times I'll just use leader ability, put 2 aces to my life, play a baby ace, sack, play baby ace, sack, play, and those 2 Dawn essentially just get added to my leader and become a 7K body. So it lets me swing for like 9, 9, or 9, 11, 11, 11.
Yeah.
And that's with just those 3 cards. That's ignoring not having any Morias on board or having any Sabos that you can attach a Dawn to, or a Luffy you can attach a Dawn to, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we went over the ending games. What I'd like to go over now is actually some matchups ideas. We can do as much or as little as you'd like, but with that, with matchups, I'd like to first go into the mirror matchup. What should we be looking to do here if we end up facing another Taxi Luffy?
Okay, so if you're in the mirror matchup, you need to see your yellow Luffy, because and ideally yellow Sabo, because neither of y'all should be attacking each other. Y'all should just be looking at each other the whole time. You might think why. The main reason is the first person basically to blink and use like their flambés early or their Hioris early. Even Machina early, even though it does allow you to rearrange your life, usually gets set too far behind because those cards are very useful to self-awaken quickly. And Luffy, the good thing about Luffy is, one, it does a flambe a turn. So it does a flambe effect a turn, so you get to lower it down. You get to lower your life, and then you get to a point where you're at 2 life. You get to go Luffy effect, get rid down to 1, flambe 0, and then you start going off to the races. And now you use that turn to really pressure your opponent. So like that turn, normally I'm always like, you want to go ace Sabo, but if you're at that point, double ace is very good if you happen to have the cards for it, because then you get to go swings like 7, 8, 11 at your opponent, and if they're at like 1 or 2 life, or if they're at 1 life, I guess, or even 2 life, you can definitely make them lose a lot of cards in their hand.
Yeah, maybe maybe I like to call it like awakening chicken or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a way to put it. But yeah, it sounds like a really good plan.
And then for the reason you want Sabo is just to kill your opponent's Luffy, because Luffy's like the name of the game.
Yeah.
Because after that, then it just becomes like Sabo face-offs, where you both have a bunch of Sabos and you're trying to see who taps first, and then he tapped first and I was able to guard it. Now I just swing all at him.
Yeah.
So it does feel like a game of chicken. Morias are very helpful in the matchup, but more importantly, that is definitely seeing the Luffy.
Yeah.
So, but you also want to go second. Funny enough, even though your opponent can play the first Luffy, going second, you get 1 more card. That 1 more card can be another Sabo, could be another Searcher, could be a Luffy, because they only have that 1 turn ahead of you.
Could be the extra flambe you needed in case to actually self-awaken at that point. So the extra card's really good. Okay, got it. The next matchup I'd like to go into is Gecko Maria. Now, I guess I like to say from Gecko's Maria's point of view, they do it two ways. They either starve you and try to go wide, or just only see geckos and ishos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they go really fast at you and put you in a spot where if you have to like use your cards early, and maybe it's not as consistent, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But what are your thoughts, I guess, on either one? I mean, I feel like just getting big as a leader is going to be your goal here.
Yeah. So for the second one you said, the way they usually come at you is they're gonna try and Perona you every turn.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one way so they can attack you and get rid of cards from your hand. If you keep your plan of saving at least a Flambe or a Hiyori, or if you ever get to land a Luffy,
Mm.
that's very good
Mm-hmm.
because the Luffy, in most of the time, in order for them to get rid of it, they have to attack and bring back an Absalon. So you get to
Yeah.
tank that hit, which makes you at a lower life. And then they used at least 3 Dawn, but usually more.
Yeah. They usually
To
they have to see Helmeppo for that
yeah,
scenario. And in my
or Hino.
case scenario that happens with this, like if I play Luffy on curve, you it's good to play
Mm-hmm.
Luffy on curve here. Really, really good. If I play Luffy
Mm-hmm.
on curve, they need to get rid of this card because you're just gonna Sabo the rest of the game. And they
Mm-hmm.
literally can't do anything to your field because every turn you're literally playing Sabo every turn. By the way,
Yeah.
it's actually funny. So they have to see Helmeppo and like and another card and use their leader skill, right, to attack you.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's pretty ideal. I would say Mulligan for Luffy and Sabo. Sabo's very, very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
After the Luffy play, if they play down a Kuzan,
Well,
which
it's
is
not
their
as
way.
scary. Kuzan is not as scary in this matchup as in Sokka because
Mm-hmm.
Sokka can bottom deck. This deck they can only destroy. So
Mm-hmm.
even if they play Kuzan, you're just like, okay, Saba,
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter that they have the Kuzan anymore.
exactly. Right. It's just a
Uh,
5K beat stick like the rest of them. So
But this is very favored for us in most cases because we become a 9K leader. They usually only have 5K bodies, so they need
yeah,
4 Dons to swing it to us. They only have Moria as a real attacker.
yeah,
The hard strategy or the one that could be difficult is
yeah.
the
Isho,
hard
Moria,
yeah, what's that strategy called? The hard
hard damage tonight.
yeah, there's another word for it, but yeah, the hard damage deny version is if you never see a Luffy,
Yeah.
that can be a really hard matchup because they get to build up a board of like Isho, double
Moria.
Moria, and like 2 other attackers. So that's why I really emphasize seeing at least one Luffy in the
Mm-hmm.
matchup because what it does, it at least makes you a 2 life because it's gonna be you play Luffy, you activate the effect,
Mm-hmm.
and then usually it's not always the case. Usually, in order for them to kill the Luffy, they have to attack and use the leader effect. They can always just hard play Helmeppo, hard play Absalon on 6,
Mm-hmm.
which in that case you need either another Luffy or Makino, or that's the reason we have so many self awakeners ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but for the most part, they usually attack, and that gets you down to 2, and then from there you can just go like double Flambe, Flambe Hiyori,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Ivankov Flambe. You have
Yeah. I
plenty
mean,
of ways to actually lower
yeah,
your
there's some
life.
pretty good things, like on 9 Dawn, if you're at 2 life, like what we're saying, instead of doing Ivankov, you could just flambe, play Hiyori, play a card from your hand, and then,
And then
just,
you got the exact same
yeah,
thing. You just out of blocker, but
yeah,
it's fine.
exactly, yeah, it's great, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it's a good scenario. I think it's some really good legs
Yeah.
as far as that way goes. So, yeah, just do that, and your opponent will look at you not knowing what to do. Their main thing is going to be like Rebecca's, if they're playing Rebecca's to go
Mm-hmm.
defensive against you. But just hope and pray you keep on getting good leader things going on, and never attack their characters. Their characters
Yeah.
they're just terrible. They're just terrible.
The main way they'll try and stall you out is with Rebecca and the little dog, the
Oh
two
yeah,
the 2 cost blocker. That is a strategy people have, but that usually falls after the second Moria hits because it's hard to stop 7, 9, 11, and then 7, 9, 9, 11.
yeah, yeah
So
they basically have had to see if they have a chance in this game. They have to guard out all your early swings and then have an insane hand later with like a lot of life, and you just run out of gas, which can happen. It can happen, but that's how they win. But how you win is just putting pressure on them.
Yeah, because you attack for really big numbers, and they do have a lot of 2Ks in their deck, but they don't have enough to cover as many attacks as we throw at them.
Yeah, when you start swinging, I had a game yesterday. I just swung 9, 9, 9, 9, 10, 10, and it, like 3 9s and 2 10s. He's like, "Oh yeah, dang it! I couldn't guard out of the 2 10s."
I mean, to be fair, in one of my matchups against him, I swung 7 times, and then a 9, and then an 11.
Yeah,
and the guy had 11 cards in hand, and it didn't matter because I just swung so many times.
Yeah, exactly. So the next matchup I'd like to go over is Sakazuki. It's kind of a hard thing. I want to say maybe test out the Fleche version if you're trying to face more Sakazukis at your like locals and maybe some regionals. But with this, what are your thoughts on the deck?
Fleche's version, in my opinion, is more straightforward into Sakazuki. It's very straightforward where you're trying to kill everything, get them to low life, and then rush them down with like probably a baby ace from hand, and then Amaru with your leader.
Yeah.
My version takes a different approach. I really go all in on trying to stall them out, quote unquote. Where this is the matchup where I came up with being a 9K leader with a life, because I feel like the main way they beat us is if they get to go. They have a Moria on board. They go Ice Age, your Sabo, Hound Blaze, pump up their Moria, put the rest of their Dawn on their Moria, and swing at your leader. It doesn't matter if you're 9K, getting hit by 19 is hard to guard. So, I like to keep myself at 1 life so that we can play around that 1 attack.
Yeah.
And then we usually beat them by being able to swing 7, 9, 11 multiple times, because the deck does not have a lot of counter, as it is one of its weaknesses. And these numbers are really big that if they're not playing Rebecca every turn and you're able to play multiple Sabos or Sabo Ace basically every turn with the Moria, it becomes really hard for them to actually beat you.
Yeah.
But that being said, their deck is very aggressive. They can cause us to stumble by putting our pieces in the bottom of the deck, so we need to see multiple pieces. So finding multiple Sabos is very important in that matchup, because that lets you put more cards in your graveyard, which lets you keep going later on. But that's usually the way I play the matchup. I've had good success with it. Obviously, I'm not like 100% winner against Saka, but I do win most of my games against them. But if you do want a more straightforward version, I think Fleche's list is very aimed towards beating Saka.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good. I mean, I will say against Sakazuki, they're playing the Hound Blaze game, right? Playing Hound Blaze and Marakumo, because you're a Sabo deck essentially, right? But I guess your angle is trying this stuff out. I've been finding that lately Sakazukis have been drawing literally 4 Hound Blazes against me every game.
Well, like Hound Blaze isn't the problem for me. The problem is everyone now they're going to more Amakumo.
Yeah.
And for example, one of the games I lost because he saw his 4th Amakumo against me.
Yeah.
And granted, even though he saw it, the main reason I lost because I misplayed. That was the game I should have discarded the ace. And if I discard the ace, I could have been putting more pressure on him, and he ended up living with 1K. But that game really proved to me that the strategy does work. Because being Amakumo'd 4 times for full value, it wasn't like
he did on 2. They played 4 Amakumos in their deck?
They played 4 in their deck and used all 4 against me and a Hound Blaze.
They're angling their deck toward this now.
But like even through that, I still got it down to where it was a 1K counter in hand.
Yeah.
And that was mostly because I misplayed real bad that one turn. Because you remember that was the turn where if I discard ace, I get to put more pressure. Because my very first Moria was just bring back a Sabo instead of bringing back a Sabo.
Do you think if like this whole strategy doesn't work, they don't say like Ivankov or Hiyori, could you just go down to 7K and have 1 life and then the next turn? And then because as long as they don't have a Gecko Moria and a Hound Blaze, right?
I mean,
right then,
even if they do have Gecko Moria and a Hound Blaze, usually all lines that lead to just with 1 life usually comes with 2 blockers.
Yeah.
So it'd
Okay.
be either Viola, Sabo, or Ivankov Sabo. So they'll
Yeah.
have to get rid of both of them anyway.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I think there's a lot of options here, but I think that's a very simple way of kind of breaking down the matchup. Either be very aggressive, and I think you should still try to be aggressive in this
Yes. Yes, you
build,
still want
just
to hit
not
them hard.
as right.
Yeah, you still hit them hard. You just hit them hard with your characters.
Yeah, got it. The next matchup I'd like to go over is actually Enel. And I guess there's two versions of Enel, but you can kind of speak generally. I think this matchup might be pretty close to even.
I have only played against the Star Enel.
Uh-huh.
I have not played against the aggro one. I'm pretty sure the aggro one is our side favored. Because they do have good rushers. The problem is that we also we just need to. They're helping us out essentially by getting us low.
Yeah.
The Star Vanilla is a little bit harder because if you don't see Luffy again, and even if you see Luffy, if they immediately reject it, if they don't reject it, then you're fine. But usually what happens is they reject it, and they can get to a big board of multiple Katakuris plus Yamatos. This is a matchup where Viola really shines.
Okay.
Because a lot of times what happens is they will play their Katakuri to put your Gecko Moria. So in this matchup, I should preface this with this Gecko Moria is almost always a value Gecko Moria, the first one. So it's usually a Garp plus like I don't know, an Ivankov or a Garp plus a Hiyori to put a card back, or a Hiyori plus a baby to put a big guy to your life and then use the baby to bring it out. Followed by your opponent going Katakuri, putting your Moria to your life face up. Key part, it's face up, so when they do attack and take the life, it goes to the bottom of your deck. So what we can do is we can play Viola, put it back face down, and then basically we get to draw that Moria again.
Yeah. Because you could Viola Flampe and then work it out through that. Yeah. So okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to kind of put it. I think obviously if they're not able to remove things like the Luffy here, you're able to build up your board to swing with your leader at them completely, like swing 5k, putting him at 1 life, and then swinging Luffy Ace, played out a Sabo.
Luffy Ace lead is 3 attacks, and then he had a couple triggers usually just to get out of that, and then you just follow up with Moria. You're a 9k leader, they're at 1 or 0 life, and then they're forced to go all in on their attacks, and they usually just swing like 14, just need guard 1. Yeah. Because you block the other one. So I have found success against it. I have lost sometimes. It's been pretty ridiculous how I lose, but I think it's slightly favored for us. A very good NL player can obviously beat us, but overall, I think we have a pretty good matchup into them. Just Moria is too strong for them. It just gives us so much power. Yeah. Luffy also just usually stays on the board, and being an 8k swing, a base swinger is also very strong.
A 5-cost 8k with 1k counter? How could they print this card? How's that possible? So
exactly.
Okay, great. So the next one I wanted to go over is Katakuri. What are your thoughts on the Katakuri matchup?
I haven't seen many Katakuris recently. It's fallen out of favor, but I think it's our side favor again. Katakuri's biggest problem against Moria and Sakazuki is Sabo, and we get to play Sabo every turn, so that's a problem for them. Also, being a 9k leader is very good. They only have 1 actual attacker that can attack us without any Dawn, 10 drop Mom. Yep. But we do get to play. We play 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blockers. 4 of them being recurable every turn. Yeah. And we put a lot of pressure. Yeah. We do not joke. The best way for them to beat us, funny enough, is their first life to be a Paraspirit trigger. And then they get to go very aggro against us. Yeah. But besides that, it's pretty hard for them to beat us because they also don't run a lot of count. They run enough counters, but they don't run as much as.
Yeah, they don't have like value cards like Rebecca that just like that just infinite value. Like I don't even think, and this is a cute way to think about it. What if you're playing a Katakuri and you start with 2 big moms in your hand, like you started with 2 in your hand, and you just counter out and then just get to 10 drop, you know? install damage. Like, what are your thoughts on like doing something silly like that? Like that might be a
I
cute way.
mean, the problem is
Yeah, the
I
problem is
don't know
still.
how you would do that
Yeah.
because our attacks. I could understand that if our attacks were like 5 and 6s,
Mm-hmm.
but if we're playing Luffy, that attack's going in for 8. That's
Yeah.
2 cards, and that's not putting any Dawn.
Yeah.
Ace is a 7K. We don't swing with like little guys. The only time we swing little is our second turn, and after that we usually
Mm-hmm.
start just swinging big.
Yeah. Okay. Got
So,
it.
but
Yeah.
but even then, most of the time we're taking our own life, and this is a matchup where you can be at 0 life and you're fine. So their big moms lose a lot of value because a lot of the value is you get to take life and
Mm-hmm.
gain a life. But we're just like, no, you
Yeah.
can just have the life every time. We want to go to 0, and then
Exactly.
we'll just do our play and become a 9K leader, and they're just like, all right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. Got it. Um, I'm trying to think. Is there a red purple law? What are your thoughts on the red purple law matchup? I find that it's favored toward us, but red purple laws seem to be either they have to like get some really good combos going and then see it tend on. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Okay, so we're both combo decks.
Okay.
So if any of us falters, the other one wins. But say we both play well, it comes down a lot to if they get to see Shirai, because Shirai is their best
Oh
card against
God,
us.
yeah.
Because Shirai matches our leader attack, so they can swing at us just base where we have to at least use a card to guard it. If
Mm,
not, they get to put more Dawn. So you always need to have a blocker for that. But the
yeah.
thing is, they can go past Sabo effect by bottom decking. So this is another matchup where I like to try and be 9K with 1 life.
Okay.
Because if you're 9K with 1 life, they have a hard time of actually killing you in one turn. Another card that's very, very rough for us to play against is Bond Clay.
Yeah.
Because if we have a Mori on board, or even if we
Even the
just have
Luffy.
an active Luffy
Yeah.
being an AK, Bond Clay becomes a huge threat. So they have some good
Yeah.
ways to attack us. Kid Killer does need a couple Dawn to be able to hit us.
Mm,
But the main threats are really Bond Clay and
yeah.
Shirai.
Yeah.
I
If they can
found
build a bunch of Bon Clays on board, like that sounds like a really
yes,
gross
it's
way.
it's really rough. But I found that I am slightly favored. I know I recently played a couple Red Purple Laws,
Yeah.
but I put them down to points where they have like 1 life, 2 cards in hand, and they need exactly Gordon Kid Killer to win the game
Mm-hmm.
multiple times, and they would just go. They would like play either not Rebecca. What's her name?
Gordon.
Reiju,
Oh, Rage,
or
okay.
Reiju into finding those pieces. So it's like I was playing towards my outs, but like if they don't have that, I win the game. So you can
Yeah.
definitely outgrind them. This
Yeah.
matchup, you 100% want second because they will take second from you because
Yeah.
this one becomes a real resource type game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, they you can pressure them pretty quickly. The matchups, I think the matchup's slightly favored for us. I did get rushed down once by a red purple law, so that is something you need to be aware of. They do run a lot of rushers, so out of nowhere, you could be at 2 life and they have 3 guys on board, and they're just like, all right, time to turn on the brakes. I'm gonna swing at you 7 times for 7K, and even though you're a 7K leader, it doesn't matter. Like you still need to discard a card every time.
Yeah.
So it can be rough, but the matchup is if it gets to real late game
Yeah.
and we become 9K, it's pretty hard for them to keep
Yeah.
up.
They actually they'll have like what they'll end up doing. They have like 5 Dawn. Only swing at you once. Um, they have to play a very specific way. I find that, and that's another like guide I'm looking into doing right now. But I find Red Purple Law to be very very hard to actually. No one's coaching Red Purple Law right now, right? That I
Uh,
found I found that it's super super hard to play. Even like players like
I think it's just different
yeah,
to
I,
play
it's
because it's
really
not like any other deck. Because you lose a lot done really quickly.
yeah.
The thought process is easy. It's just that people mess up because they use their effect a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like they must use their effect every turn. If they don't,
Yeah,
they're just going to be losing.
but
But I do think it has its own weirdness because I've talked to people and they also say that the deck is hard.
yeah,
So
I think a lot of times if you're able to see Sachi and Penguin and Reiju, you're set up for the whole game. But that's really hard. It's kind of a high roll. You're mulliganing for the specific cards, and you really this is a really, really, really wanting to go second deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the fact that it doesn't draw like a whole lot of cards is actually kind of, I guess it doesn't cycle through a lot of cards. It feels weird to me, but it's yeah, it may be a deck. It's to tell you the truth too. Fleche, he did a guide for Will's channel for with me on Red Purple Law before, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's a Red Purple Law master, and he switched over to Black Yellow Luffy, even though he's like he only plays as like before was just Red Purple Law, but now he
Mm-hmm.
like mostly just plays Taxi Luffy. So even though he probably still has love for that Law leader, it's like this is just really good right now.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, is there any other matchups you wanted to go over or brief over that has anything unique? Or I guess like the only one I could think of
The
is
only
like Whitebeard, but you just do your normal strategy and you just slam Whitebeard.
yeah, the only one that I'll talk about is Uta.
Oh, okay, yeah, Uta.
Uta Uta, they try and get to a point where they get 8-drop Kid with a bunch of blockers. The main thing I just need to say is in that matchup, you don't want to be chaining Morias. You want to do
Okay,
ideally get to do one Morio
yeah,
before or immediately after they play
mm,
their kid. After that, you do want to be trying to use your Dawn to attack the kid down,
yeah,
because that being an AK lead or Moria being AK
mm,
means that your own Moria attacks are not as good, like your turns, because you use all 10 Dawn to bring back two guys. So one Ace can't attack. Two Sabo's a good blocker.
mm,
Moria is just a 9k, so they could discard a 2k, and then the
okay,
11k all they do is they just
yeah,
block with the
got it.
with the guys. So you want to do one, and then you want to set up the second one. That's where like Viola becomes really good,
Mm,
because that's one where you can just like put two guys in your life with Luffy effect. Play the Viola, put it face down, and then you put like three on your Moria, two or three on your
yeah,
Ace, two or three on your Luffy, and you say, okay, I'm gonna take 6 cards out of your hand right now.
yeah,
And then they take the 6, and then it's up to them to whether they attack or not. And then your next turn, you get to go the whole. Then I'll play Mori again, bring out
mm,
to gain to 11k
mm,
or even 9k, because at that point, because you might not need to play the activate leaf effect, and
yeah.
then you can swing 10-10 with your own Moria and
Okay,
Luffy.
got it. Yeah, and it
So
definitely
that was
has
just the main
some.
thing I wanted
Just
to say.
we have to play around 8-drop Kid, and then obviously one thing I want to say, does backlight, it gets rid of a 5 cost, right? We got to be a
Yes,
little
tapped.
careful about swinging with the Luffy early if
I
we're
mean, if you
afraid of a
follow it up
backlight.
with Sabo, then you'll be fine because they can't kill
Oh
it then.
yeah, if you just do that, yeah. No, now we're broken. Never mind. We're the best. We're the best deck of the game now. But never mind. They're no chance, no chance. But
Yeah,
obviously it is a good deck. But
yeah.
yeah. Okay, great. Is there any like final thoughts you have about Taxi Luffy for this set?
Um, for this set, the deck's very strong. Blue is probably the scariest color to see for you
Pudding?
because of Pudding and Rager Tiger Blade.
Yeah.
Those two cards are very annoying. I lost to a Nami that ran 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So randomly, they just send 2 5-drops to the bottom of your deck. That's very,
Yeah.
very annoying.
You're gonna see
But
random blue
overall,
Dofis too, stuff like that
yeah.
now. So
But overall, this deck is very strong. It's definitely a meta defining deck. Next set, OP7, when Sokka gets banned, it's literally the meta defining deck. That's the reason it became a big monster
gets a
meta.
new yellow Luffy as well.
hmm it has more room to grow. It has different play styles coming up in the next set, so it's gonna be very fun. It's a very good deck, very consistent. I
Mhm.
definitely recommend giving it a try and telling us what you think.
Yeah. Great. Well, uh, if you watch this whole video, thanks for watching our first video on the Patreon. I do appreciate your support. And if you guys have any questions or want to go more in depth with things, just message around the Discord. I will have like a little guidance chat. And obviously, Eric's more available for things such as guidances or maybe even coachings. But I do appreciate him coming on here today. But thank you so much for watching this video again. We'll see you in the next one. Ciao.